As the State House unveils its budget, one of the key pieces deals with education. And joining us now with analysis of the education portion of the House budget is Dr. Terry Stoops. He is director of the Center for Effective Education at the John Locke Foundation. And Terry, you were just telling me that this is such an extensive budget. You really had to take a lot of notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually when you look at a state budget proposal, you look at things like the increases in teacher pay and maybe a few other provisions here or there. But there is a tremendous amount of policy in this budget, and not just small minor tweaks to existing statutes, but the implementation of large-scale policies, of school choice policies, of curriculum policies. And what makes that unique is that the General Assembly doesn't always get involved in curriculum matters. But I think the whole debate over the social studies standards and critical race theory means that their attention is now turned to issues that have to do with the development of state standards and the adoption of curriculum on the local level. So we see a lot of high interest issues being addressed in this budget.
We'll get back to the policy, but let's go back to the numbers, which is what we usually talk about with the budget. What stands out in terms of the House's budget for education numbers?
Well, teacher pay is always the thing that everyone focuses on. So you may recall that Governor Cooper had a proposal of a 10% increase over the biennium in average teacher pay. The Senate came out with a budget proposal that had around 3% increase in average teacher pay, and the House bumps that up to about 5.5% over the 2 years. I actually thought it was going to be higher, to be completely honest, because one of the ways that you could get Governor Cooper's attention and possibly get his signature on a budget, or at least allowing a budget to pass without a veto, is getting close to his teacher pay number. And so I expected something along the lines of 7 or 8% over the 2 years. And instead, the Senate is coming, or the House is coming with a budget that's 5.5%. Now, there are bonuses and other incentive programs that are included in this. What makes the House's proposal unique in a couple ways is, first, they focus on experienced teachers. The Senate had a focus that was across the experience levels for classroom teachers, but in recent years, there's been a lot of complaints, some of them justified, that we haven't been paying enough attention to our most experienced teachers. And so the House really focuses on that. To offset the focus on experienced teachers, they would reinstate the master's degree pay, which I think is terrible policy, by the way. And the research backs me up on this, that the John Locke Foundation for decades has been talking about the fact that there's very, very little research to substantiate increases for a master's degree in education. And it would also provide paid leave, which would predominantly affect those younger teachers that are new parents. These are two proposals that are meant to attract those younger teachers and give them something while providing substantial increases for the more experienced teachers, sometimes along the lines of thousands of dollars increase for each year.
Anything else within the numbers that we should point out at this time?
Well, I think it's important to look at some of the large-scale proposals for capital expenses. Now, we don't talk a lot about capital expenses because that traditionally has been the responsibility of local governments. But in recent years, the General Assembly has focused on using money, pay-as-you-go money, to invest in infrastructure. And in this budget, the House would set aside money for K-12 schools, providing funding for a variety of different projects that would assist schools in being able to address capital needs. So the entire capital plan is a $9 billion plan. The K-12 portion would be a significantly smaller amount, of course, and just a portion of that. But it is worth noting that there's more of an interest among legislators in focusing on capital expenditures and assisting those districts that can't provide the capital funding themselves to get state funding to be able to do so.
You've already touched on some of the policy that would be within this House budget. What are some of the other policy items that we should know about?
Well, certainly the curriculum, I think, is something that would need to be focused on, because this budget would delay the implementation of the social studies standards and create a commission that would be an oversight body for the creation of standards. Now, I am proud to say that this is something that the John Locke Foundation has recommended for many years, that rather than leaving the development of standards to DPI that creates our state agency that creates standards behind closed doors, we would have an open and transparent process with a variety of stakeholders appointed to a committee that would be responsible for overseeing the development of standards and the implementation of those standards. So that is one, I think, very positive development in this budget, and one that I hope one day to see implemented, and not just because it's something that I recommended, although that's always a good feather in one's cap. There's also a focus on what happens at the local level. So the curriculum materials that are adopted by localities would be transparent. They would be open to the public, as they can be now, but this would be a requirement, whereas now, in order to see the curriculum materials, you have to formally request them from a district. But it would provide an oversight committee that would address parental concerns about curriculum on the local level and really put the districts in the driver's seat when it comes to curriculum adoption. Now, this isn't anything new. The local school districts have always had a strong and very obvious statutory authority to direct the adoption of curriculum in local school districts. But this clarifies some of that, and it creates a more inclusive process that includes a variety of stakeholders, including parents and educators and members of the community, to be able to be part of the process of that all-important step of adopting a curriculum that not only aligns with state standards, but aligns with the best practices and views of the local community. So there's a tremendous amount of focus on curriculum, and I guess the final part that I would talk about when it comes to the policy changes is the Equity in Education Act that would be included in the budget. This would essentially make changes to our private school voucher programs. It would increase the amount of the Opportunity Scholarship Program, as well as combine our two private school programs for special needs children. Absolutely essential that we do this, whether in a budget or in some of the pieces of legislation that have passed one of the chambers or the other. This is a long time coming and absolutely needed for the tremendous interest that we're seeing in private school scholarship programs due to the pandemic and the aftermath of it.
Last item, you've seen budgets now from the governor, from the Senate, from the House. Do you have a favorite, or are there some items that you like in each of them that you think they ought to mix and match?
Definitely no favorites here. The House budget should certainly include some of the elements of the Senate budget, such as a tutoring program that employs an education savings account. I think that is certainly something that we would like to see in the final budget document. On the other hand, the House has a curriculum transparency requirement that we are strong proponents of here at the John Locke Foundation. The Senate did not include that in their budget. So there is a perfect bill if we take some of the House and Senate provisions and put them together. I think the House is probably stronger on the financial side and has some real strengths when it comes to the policy. But the Senate budget, I think, makes some good strides as well. And so once the conference committee comes together and considers both budgets, I think that there are elements of both that can be included, and I think they're going to send the governor an extremely strong budget. Whether he decides to veto that budget or not remains to be seen. My money is on that he'll probably veto it, and so there'll be a lot of horse trading to determine whether there will be votes available to be able to overturn that veto.
As this process moves forward, we know that one person who will be watching very closely is Dr. Terry Stoops. He is the director of the Center for Effective Education at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.